Hong Kong. A training hall filled beyond comfort, not a tournament, not a show. Just a room full of martial artists who had heard the same rumor for weeks and finally decided to see it themselves. Some came out of curiosity. Others came quietly, arms folded, already certain of what they believed. Because the man standing near the center of the room was not unknown, Bruce Lee had already built a reputation that moved faster than he did. Students spoke about his speed the way people speak about lightning. Demonstrations where hands blurred, strikes that seemed to arrive before they were seen. Many in the room expected something like that today. Across from him stood a Shaolin master, older, much older, 70. Someone whispered near the back wall. He didn't look impressive in the way people usually mean that. No dramatic posture. No attempt to command the room, just a quiet man standing upright, sleeves loose around his arms, watching Bruce Lee with the calm patience of someone who had already waded through many things. At first, the atmosphere felt almost friendly, curious. But then Bruce stepped forward, and something shifted. Because what happened next was not fast, it was slow, painfully slow, and before anyone fully understood what they were watching, 20 minutes had already begun. The room had been filling for nearly an hour. People stood along the walls first, then the doorways, then the narrow space near the windows where the air moved just enough to keep the room from feeling completely sealed. Nobody wanted to miss the beginning. Bruce Lee was already there, not performing, not warming up in any dramatic way, just moving lightly across the floor, shoulders loose, arms rolling through small circles that looked almost casual if you didn't know what you were looking at. But the room watched him anyway. A few students sat cross-legged near the front, whispering quietly to each other. Others stood with their backs against the wooden wall panels, arms folded, studying every small movement. Most of them had heard the same stories. Years of training behind him already. Tournament demonstrations where experienced fighters stepped forward and stepped back just as quickly. Speed that didn't feel theatrical, just efficient, direct, unsettlingly precise. People trusted what they had seen before. That trust filled the room as much as the crowd did. Bruce seemed comfortable inside it. He walked across the mat once more, stopping near the center. His posture wasn't arrogant exactly, but it carried the ease of someone used to being watched. Someone near the back shifted. The door had opened again. At first, a few people turned their heads, then more. The man who stepped inside did not hurry. He moved slowly, carefully, the way older men often move when they know there is no reason to rush. His robe hung loose along his arms, the sleeves wide enough that his hands disappeared when he lowered them. He didn't scan the room. Didn't acknowledge the attention forming around him. He simply walked forward until the floor opened slightly and then stopped. That was when someone near the wall spoke under their breath. 70. The word moved through the room quietly, almost like air passing through a crack. Some people leaned forward. Others looked at Bruce. The contrast was impossible to ignore now. Bruce Lee stood in the center of the mat, lean, sharp, balanced on the balls of his feet, as if motion was his natural state. The Shaolin master stood a few steps away, upright but relaxed. His weight settled through his frame like it had been there for decades. For a moment, neither man moved. Bruce studied him first, not aggressively, just carefully. His eyes moved along the old man's stance, down toward the feet, back up toward the shoulders. Small calculations happening behind a calm expression. The master noticed, but his reaction was almost invisible. Just a slight adjustment of his hands inside the sleeves. Nothing else. Someone coughed softly near the back wall. Then the room grew quiet again. Bruce stepped closer. The movement wasn't dramatic. Just one step forward onto the mat between them. But it pulled every pair of eyes tighter toward the center, because now they were close enough to touch. And the old master still hadn't changed his expression. Bruce lifted one hand slightly, almost like an invitation. For a moment, it seemed like the beginning of something fast. something people would later try to describe. But the old man simply raised his arms from the sleeves of his robe and placed his palms forward in a calm, neutral guard. The gesture was slow. So slow that it almost felt deliberate. Bruce watched the hands rise, and something in his posture sharpened. The room felt it immediately. What people had come to see was about to begin. But no one in the room realized yet this would not look like anything they expected. The room held its breath without meaning to. Bruce stood a step away now, weight balanced, shoulders loose. His hands floated in front of him, not rigid, not decorative. Ready. Across from him, the old master remained almost exactly where he had been. Palms forward, elbows relaxed, feet planted in a stance that looked simple enough that a beginner might miss what was inside it. No one spoke. The wooden floor creaked somewhere near the back wall as someone adjusted their stance to see better. Bruce moved first. Not a strike, just a reach. His hand extended toward the master's forearm, testing distance the way experienced fighters do, light, exploratory, the kind of contact that usually leads to something faster a moment later. The old man allowed the touch. His arm lifted slightly to meet Bruce's hand. Not resisting, not retreating, just meeting. The contact was soft, two forearms resting against each other for the first time. And for a second, nothing happened. Bruce shifted his weight forward. A small adjustment, almost invisible unless you were watching closely. The kind of pressure that begins a chain of reactions in most exchanges. The master responded with something even smaller. His elbow lowered a fraction. That was all. But Bruce felt it. His fingers tightened slightly as he adjusted the angle again, pressing forward through the contact point, searching for structure he could move. Still nothing dramatic. The master's body did not sway, did not stiffen. It simply absorbed the pressure and returned it quietly through the same line. A few people along the wall leaned forward. They had expected speed by now. Bruce Lee was not known for slow exchanges. Yet here he was, still testing. He tried another angle. His left hand slid along the master's forearm, while his right shifted closer to the shoulder, increasing the pressure, not forceful but undeniable, something that usually created movement. The master's foot adjusted half an inch, barely visible, but the effect traveled through the contact point immediately. Bruce paused, just for a moment, then he pushed again, this time more clearly. Not a shove, not a strike, a direct test of balance, the kind of pressure meant to tilt someone out of their center. The master didn't tilt, he didn't brace either. His body simply settled lower by the smallest degree, like a tree adjusting deeper into the ground during a wind gust. Bruce felt that too. His eyes narrowed slightly. Another shift, another angle. The crowd noticed the change in him. It was subtle, but the easy rhythm he carried earlier had sharpened. This was no longer demonstration distance. He stepped in closer. Now their forearms crossed fully, shoulders within reach. The master's breathing remained steady. Bruce applied pressure again, this time with more commitment through his hips. The master's stance changed by a single step, not backward, just sideways. Enough that Bruce's force moved past him instead of through him. Bruce recovered instantly, resetting his feet, but the room had seen it. The first real test had been offered, and the old man had not moved the way anyone expected. A murmur started near the doorway, then faded. Bruce rolled his shoulders once, loosening them again. When he stepped forward the next time, it wasn't just a test. It carried intention now, and for the first time the master's eyes sharpened in return. Something had shifted, not in the movement, in the attention. And everyone in the room could feel it. The air inside the room had changed. Not louder, not tense in the way people expect, just tighter. Bruce stepped in again, this time closing the distance until their shoulders were nearly aligned. His hands moved with greater certainty now, sliding along the master's arms, searching for a place where the structure might open. He found none. The old man's forearms stayed relaxed, Yet every time Bruce shifted pressure through one angle, the response arrived quietly through another. Not resisting, just redirecting. Bruce leaned in slightly, more weight this time. The contact between them deepened. Their arms crossed and uncrossed in slow circles, hands tracing small arcs that only experienced practitioners in the room fully understood. This wasn't fighting. This was listening through the body. Bruce pressed forward again, guiding his strength through the center line. His hips turned, adding power through the stance. For a moment, the master seemed to drift backward. A few people near the wall straightened immediately. But the movement stopped almost as soon as it began. The master's back foot settled. His spine lengthened upward just slightly, like a rope being pulled taut from the top. Bruce felt the change through his arms. He pushed again. Nothing. No stumble. No shift in balance. Just the same quiet pressure returning through the contact. The room grew more attentive. A man standing near the window folded his arms tighter, eyes narrowing as if he were trying to solve something invisible. Bruce adjusted again. His right hand slid across the master's wrist, redirecting the contact while his left pressed inward toward the chest. Not a strike, but a structural probe meant to collapse the center. The master rotated his forearm. The pressure dissolved. Bruce's hand found air instead of resistance. He withdrew and immediately returned through another line. Faster this time. The old man stepped half a foot to the side. Bruce followed. Now they were moving slowly across the floor, their feet sliding in quiet patterns while their arms remained connected. Still no explosive motion. Still no sudden technique. Just pressure. Bruce increased it again. His shoulders lowered slightly as he drove forward through his stance, testing the old man's base more directly now. For a brief moment, the master's robe shifted as his torso tilted. Several heads in the crowd leaned forward at once. But the tilt stopped. The master's foot adjusted underneath him, placing itself in a position that looked almost accidental. Bruce pushed again. Nothing moved. A bead of sweat rolled down the side of Bruce's neck. Not from exhaustion, from concentration. The exchange continued like that for several moments. Pressure, adjustment, pressure again. The old master remained calm, breathing steady through his nose, eyes relaxed but attentive. Bruce's movements stayed sharp. But the room had begun to notice something. The young man known for speed was now moving carefully, patiently, as if every ounce of force he applied returned to him through the contact. A quiet ripple passed through the spectators. Some shifted their weight. Others simply stared harder. Bruce stepped back half a pace. For the first time since their arms had connected, the contact broke. The master lowered his hands slightly, still calm. Bruce rolled his shoulders once, drawing in a deeper breath. Not frustration. Adjustment. Then he stepped forward again. This time, the pressure returned with greater intent, and somewhere near the back wall, someone quietly glanced at the clock. By now the room had settled into a strange kind of silence, not the polite, quiet people keep during demonstrations. This was heavier. The kind that builds when everyone senses something unfolding, but no one is quite ready to name it. Bruce stepped forward again, reconnecting his forearms with the master's. The contact returned instantly, warm skin against skin, pressure passing between them like a current. This time Bruce didn't circle first. He went directly through the center. His hips drove forward, shoulders aligned behind the push. Not reckless force, but unmistakable strength, placed carefully through the line of contact. For a brief second, the master's upper body shifted. It was subtle, just enough that the fabric of his robe tightened across his chest. Several people along the wall leaned in. Bruce felt it too. He followed immediately, stepping deeper into the pressure, trying to continue the movement before the structure could recover. But the recovery had already happened. The master's rear foot settled again, quietly, almost lazily, and the forward pressure that had seemed promising dissolved into something stable. Bruce paused. Only for a moment, but the pause was visible. He withdrew one arm slightly, adjusting the contact point along the master's forearm, searching again for leverage. Nothing opened. The old man's posture remained unchanged, not stiff, not defensive, just aligned in a way that made every push feel strangely incomplete. Bruce pressed again, this time angling downward toward the master's shoulder. The master rotated his torso. The pressure slipped past him. Bruce redirected instantly, catching the motion and driving forward again. For a moment, the two bodies compressed closer together, their stances tightening across the floor. And then Bruce stepped back. A full step. The contact broke again. A quiet murmur passed the back of the room before fading. Bruce lowered his hands briefly, drawing a deeper breath through his nose. Not fatigue. Just recalculation. His chest rose once, then settled. Across from him, the master hadn't moved. He stood exactly where he had been, arms relaxed, breathing steady, watching Bruce with the same calm attention he had carried since entering the room. Bruce lifted his hands again. This time the movement was slower, more deliberate. When their arms touched again, the pressure returned immediately. But the rhythm had changed. Bruce no longer rushed the angles. He felt carefully along the master's structure, adjusting one point at a time, testing the balance with short pulses of strength instead of long drives. The master responded the same way he always had. Small rotations, tiny shifts through the feet. Nothing that looked dramatic to anyone unfamiliar with what they were seeing. But those who understood, understood. The room had grown even quieter now. No whispers. No shifting feet. Just the soft sliding of cloth and the faint sounds of breathing between two men standing almost perfectly still. And then for the first time since the exchange began, Bruce's breath left his mouth instead of his nose. A small exhale. Short, controlled, but noticeable. Somewhere along the wall, someone glanced at the clock again. The minute hand had moved farther than expected. Much farther. Because by now, they had been standing there for quite a while. The longer it continued, the stranger it felt. Not because of what people were seeing. Because of what they weren't. No sudden burst of speed. No strike that cracked through the air. No dramatic moment where someone clearly gained control. Just two men standing in the center of the room, arms touching, pressure passing between them in slow, quiet waves. Bruce adjusted again. His hands slid across the master's wrists, searching for an opening that had not appeared once since the exchange began. He shifted his stance, lowering his center and driving forward with a sharper line through his hips. The master's body yielded half a step, just enough that the pressure did not land where Bruce intended. Bruce followed immediately, trying to carry the momentum through, but again the structure returned beneath him stable, quiet, rooted through the old man's feet like something that had grown there long ago. A few people along the wall exchanged quick glances. The silence in the room was beginning to feel heavier than the movement itself. Bruce pressed again. His forearms tightened now, muscles clearly engaged as he attempted to compress the master's frame from a different angle. The pressure traveled downward this time, testing the base more directly. The master's spine remained upright. His arms rotated slightly, guiding the force along a path that simply disappeared. Bruce changed direction again. Then again. Each time the result was the same. Not resistance, just quiet redirection. The two men drifted slowly across the wooden floor, their feet sliding through careful adjustments that looked almost accidental, unless you were close enough to see how precisely they aligned. Bruce's breathing grew deeper now, still controlled, but stronger in the chest. Another push. The master's robe shifted as his torso tilted a fraction. Several people in the crowd leaned forward again, sensing the moment might finally break. But the tilt stopped. The old man's foot settled beneath him, absorbing the pressure the way soil absorbs rain. Bruce stepped in harder, his shoulder nearly touching the master's now, as he tried to move the frame directly. For a brief second, the master's balance wavered just enough that his heel lifted slightly from the floor. A visible imbalance. It lasted no more than a heartbeat. Then the heel returned. The structure settled, and the pressure Bruce had driven forward simply vanished through the master's stance. Bruce released the push and stepped back half a pace. His chest rose with a deeper breath. Across from him, the master remained calm, hands lowering slightly as if the entire exchange had been nothing more than conversation. No celebration. No expression of effort. Just quiet presence. Someone near the doorway finally glanced again at the clock on the wall. The room had been watching this for 20 minutes. 20 minutes of pressure, adjustments, subtle shifts of balance that most people outside the room would never understand. And Bruce Lee, fast, explosive, feared for his power, had not been able to move the old man. Not even once. The silence that followed felt almost physical. Bruce stood there for a moment longer, studying the master with the same careful attention he had shown at the beginning. But the room felt different now, because everyone watching understood something had just happened, even if they couldn't fully explain what it was. For a few seconds after Bruce stepped back, no one moved. The pressure that had filled the room didn't disappear. It just loosened slightly, like a knot that had been pulled tight for too long. Bruce lowered his hands. Not dramatically, just letting them fall beside him as he stood there, chest rising once more before settling again. Across from him, the old master did the same. His arms were turned inside the loose sleeves of his robe, the fabric folding softly around them, as if the exchange had never happened at all. No one rushed forward. No applause, just people watching, trying to understand what they had seen. Bruce looked at the man carefully, the same way he had looked at him in the beginning, but now there was something quieter behind it. Not doubt, not defeat, recognition. The master met the gaze without expression. Then he inclined his head slightly. A small gesture. Respectful. Simple. Bruce returned it just as quietly. Around them, the room slowly began to breathe again. Someone near the window shifted their stance. Another man along the wall let out a breath he had probably been holding longer than he realized. The clock ticked softly above the doorway. 20 minutes. 20 minutes of pressure, balance, and patience that had unfolded so slowly. Many people hadn't noticed the time passing at all. Now the moment was over. The master stepped back first. His movement was careful but steady as he turned toward the doorway, the crowd opening instinctively to make space for him. Some people watched him leave. Others kept their eyes on Bruce. Bruce remained in the center of the mat for another moment. Shoulders relaxed again, as if the intensity that had gathered around him had quietly drained away. No explanation followed. No speech, just a room full of martial artists standing in thoughtful silence. A few eventually approached Bruce, speaking softly, but most people didn't rush in. They simply gathered their things and walked out into the hallway one by one. Outside, conversations began slowly. Some people sounded impressed. Others sounded unsettled. Inside the training hall, the floor returned to stillness. But the feeling of that slow exchange stayed with the people who had watched it. Years later, some would still describe the moment the same way. Not as a fight, not even as a challenge. Just two men standing face to face until the room understood something it hadn't before. And long after the crowd had gone home that evening, the quiet of those 20 minutes still lingered in the way people remembered it.